wish you had taken mine so I could have the sheer pleasure of torturing you for the rest of your life.
I've known Tony. I saw her right here when I was there. You had it. You have both shots now? What? You have both shots?
Yes.
That's great.
Why do you think I'm exposing myself to y'all's clean?
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to turn this over to the Secretary in just a minute. He'll have a few opening comments, and then we'll get to your questions. As you know, we're going to be doing questions from the phone and in the room. So I'm going to go 2 on the phone, 2 in the room. Secretary's got 30 minutes, so we're going to try to move this crisply. Given the restriction of time and his schedule, I'd ask you to limit your follow-ups if you can, meaning limit them to 0. So with that, Mr. Secretary, over to you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to all of you for being here today. Before I start, let me just say that I deeply appreciate the work that you do on behalf of the public. I respect the way that you cover our military, and I respect the role that you play in holding us accountable for how we defend the nation. And that is the #1 job of the Department of Defense, to defend this nation and protect our interests. As you know, I just wrapped up my first NATO defense ministerial meeting yesterday, and it was a terrific couple of days, and I want to thank Secretary General Stoltenberg for all his leadership in making that happen. You all know that it's a little tougher to meet with people in a pandemic. And even though we met virtually, we still enjoyed productive discussions about a range of challenges facing NATO today, and many that we're going to continue to face in the future. And they include a resurgent Russia, disruptive technologies, climate change, an ongoing war in Afghanistan, and the persistent threat of terrorism, and an increasingly aggressive China. We were joined in some of those conversations by representatives from some of our most capable partners, including Finland and Sweden and the European Union. And we appreciated their unique perspectives, especially about China. Indeed, I applaud NATO's work on China, and I made it clear that the United States is committed to defending the international rules-based order, which China has consistently undermined for its own interest. We here at the Pentagon and the Department of Defense view China as our primary pacing challenge, and we believe NATO can help us better think through our operating concepts and investment strategies when it comes to meeting that challenge. But really, my first goal during the ministerials was to carry forward President Biden's message that strong alliances and partnerships remain vital to our collective security, and that foreign policy will be led by our diplomats. I also stressed our ironclad commitment to the security guarantee under Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. And I don't use that word ironclad lightly. Our shared responsibility as allies, our duty, is to protect our populations and our territory. And to meet that duty, we require what the Secretary General refers to as credible deterrence and defense, which I believe means that we must, each of us, do our part to procure, prepare, and provide ready forces and capabilities. And so I'm heartened to see that many of our allies meet or exceed NATO's 2014 defense investment pledge, nine of them this year alone, in fact. And now we're into our 7th year of steady defense spending increases. And naturally, we want this trend to continue, and we want to see every member of the alliance contribute their fair share. We recognize that this isn't always easy, but collective security rarely is. And neither are the missions that we're conducting in Iraq or Afghanistan easy. We set aside a good bit of time to talk about those two places. And on Iraq, I reiterated our strong commitment to the defeat of ISIS and to supporting Iraq's long-term security, stability, and prosperity. That's a commitment that I made to my Iraqi counterpart and the Iraqi Minister of Interior just the other day after last weekend's deadly rocket attack in Erbil. I also welcomed an expanded NATO mission in Iraq that responds to the desires and aspirations of the Iraqi government. With respect to Afghanistan, I walked our allies through our thinking as the new administration comes to grips with the reality on the ground. The bottom line is this: we are committed to a responsible and sustainable end to this war while preventing Afghanistan from becoming a safe haven for terrorist groups and that threaten the interest of the United States and our allies, and ensuring a just and durable end to the long-running conflict. And so to that end, we are conducting a rigorous interagency review of the situation, including all relevant options with full consideration of the consequences of any potential course of action. We are mindful of the looming deadlines, but we want to do this methodically and deliberately. And I certainly won't get ahead of any decisions, nor will I preview the advice that I plan to give to the President. Clearly, the violence is too high right now, and more progress needs to be made in the Afghan-led negotiations. And so I urge all parties to choose the path towards peace. And the violence must decrease now. I told our allies that no matter what the outcome of our review, the United States will not undertake a hasty or disorderly withdrawal from Afghanistan that puts their forces or the alliance's reputation at risk. At this time, no decisions about our future force posture have been made. In the meantime, current missions will continue, and of course, commanders have the right and the responsibility to defend themselves and their Afghan partners against attack. As we move forward in our review, we will consult with our NATO allies, our resolute support partners, and of course, the government of Afghanistan. And there will be no surprises. We will consult each other and consult together and decide together and act together. And so that was my message over the last 2 days, and I think it was well received. For the last 70 years, NATO has proven itself to be the strongest alliance in history, upholding our shared values of democracy, individual liberty, and the rule of law. When Article 5 was first invoked, it was in our defense on September 11th. The United States will not forget that, nor will we forget our own obligations to revitalizing this and all our other alliances. Collective security is, as I said, hard work, and we're ready to put our shoulders to the wheel. And finally, I'd like to close by thanking the men and women of the Department of Defense, who, as President Biden puts it, are often how the rest of the world encounters America. And because of them and their families, and our nation will always lead from a position of strength. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, we're going to go to Lita Baldor from AP on the phone. Lita.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And it's been quite a while since we've been able to ask questions of the Defense Secretary in the briefing room. We appreciate it, and we hope that you are committed to doing this on a regular basis. My question is on Afghanistan. During the NATO meeting, were the allies pressing you for timing on an answer? How long do you think the U.S. can wait before making a decision? And is that enough time, do you think, for the Taliban to measurably change either the violence or the negotiations? Thank you.
Thanks. I would just say that, again, we're going through a rigorous process, and our allies understand that. And they would want us to make sure that we're thoughtful about how we approach this and what we do. And so, all of us are mindful of the time that's available, but we're really focused on making sure that the negotiation process takes place as it should, and that hopefully the parties will abide by their commitments that they made at the outset of the negotiations, and that we can bring the level of violence down. But we're focused on making sure that we make the right decisions, and we'll go through this process deliberately. Our allies understand that, and my sense is that they did not fully expect that we would have a decision this early on in this administration's tenure.
Next question to Missy Ryan on the phone, Washington Post.
Hi, thanks for doing this. And I echo Lita. I hope we can do this again regularly. I have a question regarding the department's handling of sexual harassment and assault. I know that one of your first actions was this memo asking for initial input from senior officials by February 5th. I'm just wondering what you have learned so far and how that'll guide your approach to tackling the problem of sexual harassment and assault. And as a corollary, there was a video that went viral in the last 24 hours of who was crying because the perpetrator of sexual assault has been retained by her commanding general. I'm wondering if you've seen the video and if your office is looking into that.
So, Missy, there was quite a bit of feedback in the transmission there, and I don't think I fully understood all of the question, but what I think I heard you ask was, based upon what we received from the services, where are we in our efforts in taking on the sexual assault issue? And the second issue, as I understood it, was about the video. Well, first of all, as I said in my testimony in front of Congress, I take this issue of sexual assault very, very seriously, and I know that the service chiefs and the service secretaries do as well. And so the collection of the data is a first step, but you can look for us to take additional steps in looking in detail at ourselves and what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what measures we need to take going forward to ensure that we provide for a safe and secure and productive environment for our teammates. I think any other approach is, in my view, irresponsible. We've been working at this for a long time in earnest, but we haven't gotten it right. And my commitment to our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines and dependents is we're going to do everything that in our power to get it right. Regarding the video, I found the video deeply disturbing. And I've asked my staff for additional information, and I'll leave it at that.
Tom?
Mr. Secretary, at your confirmation hearing a month ago, you talked about the problem of domestic extremism in the military. I'm wondering now, weeks on, do you have any sense of the scope of the extremist problem in the military? Any data, any numbers about who's kicked out, who's not let into the military? And if not, do you still hope to get some data? And also, it's now prohibited under DOD regulations to be an active member of an extremist group, but okay to have simple membership. Do you, will you move to change that, bar all membership in such groups?
So I think that was about 6 questions in one there, but yeah, let me just say a couple of words about that. First of all, I think this is a very important issue to us in a department. And I think it's an important issue because, as I said in my testimony, this tears at the very fabric of cohesion. And it's important for us to be able to trust the men and women on our left and right. I've asked for the services to conduct a one-day stand down and take 60 days to do it. And then as they conduct that stand down, I've encouraged them to have a dialogue with their troops about our values, about the oath that they took when they came into the service, and about who we are and what we're about. This is also a time for us to educate leaders in terms of understanding those signs and those symptoms that can indicate that we could be developing an issue within our ranks. But let me say up front here, though, before I go one step further, that I really and truly believe that 99.9% of our servicemen and women believe in that oath. They embrace the values that we are focused on, and they're doing the right things. But, and I expect for the numbers to be small. But quite frankly, they'll probably be a little bit larger than most of us would guess. But I expect for them to be small. But I would just say that, small numbers in this case can have an outsized impact. And when I think about, the issue of extremism in the ranks, you've heard me talk about my experience with the 82nd Airborne Division, which I believe is a great organization, and we have a lot of great organizations in the military, but the history of the storied 82nd Airborne Division. And as we wrestled with this issue when I was a lieutenant colonel, we couldn't tell that story of what we were doing and how great we were because nobody wanted to hear it. They wanted to hear about the skinheads. And so that had an outsized impact on that organization. And one of the things that sticks in my mind right now, and General Milley will probably step on my toes for saying this, but I have this image of Mark Milley, Lieutenant General Mark Milley, standing in front of a podium in Fort Hood, Texas, talking about the impact that was experienced by one of our members who had become radicalized and killed a bunch of our soldiers that were preparing for deployment. That nearly crippled the organization for a period of time. So an incredible, an outsized impact on the organization. I think that the American public has high expectations of its military, as it should, and the American public should know and understand that we're not afraid to take a look at ourselves, and we're not afraid to address, if there are issues, to address those issues that may be rising up in our climates, in our communities, and so we're going to learn a lot more. You know, we don't have specific data about numbers right now, but quite frankly, as I said earlier, you know, small numbers can have an incredible impact on a great force, and we have a great force, ladies and gentlemen.
Jennifer?
Mr. Secretary, will any U.S. troops remain at the Capitol after March 12th? And what would you say to those who say that there is no credible threat to the U.S. Capitol and those troops should go home right now?
Right now, in terms of our expected stay, it is March 12th, and we don't have an additional requirement or request from another federal agency to provide them support. So that's our focus right now. But while I'm talking about them, let me just emphasize the tremendous work that our guardsmen have been doing. And you've seen the weather that we've had lately. They are out there on point, on guard, in support of other federal agencies, protecting our lawmakers. And I can't say enough about them. And I'm really proud of what their leadership is doing also to take care of them while they're doing this tough work. But presently, we don't have any additional requirements beyond the one that we talked about.
Incredible threat?
Jennifer, I mean, it's probably not appropriate for me to talk about intelligence matters from this podium, but I would just tell you that we will continue to assess the threats as we go forward, and decisions will be based upon what we believe is credible or not. I told them when I went to see them the other day that my plan is to not keep them there one day longer than is necessary. Having said that, they know and understand that if our lawmakers need help, they need protection, they stand ready to provide that protection. But again, March 12th is what we're focused on now.
Okay, I'm going to go to the phones. Phil Stort, Reuters.
Yes, hi, Mr. Secretary. On your call with your Saudi counterpart, what message did you deliver about the war in Yemen and how this administration and this Pentagon will approach threats to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia emanating from Yemen?
Well, I certainly I consider that call to have been a good call. It was certainly reestablishing connectivity with the Crown Prince, who is also the Minister of Defense, my counterpart. As you know, President Biden has been clear about the fact that we will no longer support offensive operations, the Saudis' offensive operations into Yemen. And so they've heard that message loud and clear. And in terms of specific issues that I would have covered with the Crown Prince, we provide a readout, but and I'm certainly, I look forward to having issues or talking about issues of substance in these conversations. But I certainly won't provide details of the conversation from the podium here. So.
Okay, because of time, I'm going to go back into the room now. We'll go one for one until we run out of time. Helene?
Mr. Secretary, thank you for doing this. I have two questions, but they're connected. The first one is, you said that you found the viral video. They're both related to females in the military. You found the viral video very disturbing, but in this video, this female Marine says, and I quote, "This is why females in the military kill themselves." And you say that you're looking into this issue. She addresses specifically the commanding general, her CG, saying that or whoever the perpetrator is going to be retained in the military. What kind of message are you going to be sending to sort of the CGs, the captains, the brigade commanders throughout the military about how they deal with this issue? And connected to that, my second question is on specifically the issue of Laura Richardson and Jacqueline Van Oos. Your predecessor told us that he withheld their promotions because he was afraid of how President Trump would react to them. Are you going to be forwarding these promotions for these two women to President Biden?
Helene, I think that was two questions, each with 6 parts.
Connected.
Yeah. On the second question first, I certainly can't comment on decisions that someone else made or my predecessor made. I'll leave that to them to explain their actions. And I certainly won't comment on personnel actions from this podium in this room. I don't think that's fair to the system, not fair to my boss, and certainly not fair to the people who are who are competing. I would just say that I've seen the records of both of these women. They are outstanding, and I'll leave it at that. On the issue of sexual assault, and what is going to be done, and what I'm going to emphasize to commanders, I think we need to consider who I am and where I fit in the judicial process or chain, and we want to make sure that I preserve my ability to adjudicate or take action or whatever needs to happen. But the first things first. We have to get the facts. We have to understand what just happened. And let me also say that I care about each and every one of our troops. And certainly, I'm going to ask that her chain of command make sure that someone is looking out after her needs and make sure that we're taking care of her. So.
Okay, back to the phone here. Tara Kopp from McClatchy.
We have to get.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for doing this. I also have a question about the National Guard. A few weeks ago, the Adjutants General for the state of Washington and California said that the domestic demands on the Guard, whether they're wildfires or storms or domestic unrest, are expected to continue to in future years. And what really needs to happen is we need to increase the end strength of the Guard. I was wondering if you've talked to the National Guard about this and if you're considering requesting an end strength increase for Guard members to address these future domestic threats. Thank you.
Again, I'm really proud of the work that our Guard has done. I mean, it's and continues to do. We didn't talk about this earlier, but I think most of you know that there are over 20,000 Guardsmen out there right now around the country helping out with the COVID crisis and helping distribute vaccines and that sort of stuff. So they're having a tremendous positive effect on our country, and they're doing great work, and I'm really proud of them. In terms of end strength, that's a conversation that I've not had with the chairman or the chief of the Guard, and certainly I think when they feel that it's appropriate, if that's their concern, then they'll bring the issue forward. But to answer your question, we've not had those discussions.
The last question today is going to go to Tony, then we're going to have to wrap up.
A China question? I have a China question. Do you see any areas of cooperation with China? You talk about a pacing threat, pacing challenge. This is 4 years that we've heard the rhetoric. What areas do you see potential cooperation to lower the tensions between our two nations?
I would say that anything that we do will be based upon our best interest, and so There no doubt are some areas where we will see common interest, and there may be an opportunity to engage. But it will be from the standpoint of promoting our best interests. Now, having said that, from a Department of Defense standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, my number one concern and my number one job is to defend this country and protect our interests. And so we are, in this department, are going to do everything possible to ensure that we have the right operational concepts, the right plans in place, and that we resource those plans with the right capabilities to present a credible deterrence to not only to China or any other adversary who would want to take us on.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We have to call it quits right there. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Are you ready
Thank you,
to
everybody.
fight tonight against China?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.